Good evening and welcome to this Friday's edition of the India Development Debate. I'm Nantara Rai. The Prime Minister is taking stock of the economy. He's taken it upon himself to arrive at policy ideas, policy formulations to kickstart the economy. And he's proven that by trying to boost the confidence of the private sector. Beginning in the last week of December, when most entrepreneurs, business leaders, corporates are on holiday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi started summoning the top leaders of India Inc. to get their ideas on how the economy can be revived. We now understand from our sources that those meetings are going to continue next week as well, where the stalwarts of India Inc. are being called, being asked to be candid, being asked to be honest with their feedback, even their criticism. We are learned from our sources the Prime Minister is asking specific questions on reviving demand. The feedback is, it's not the supply side of the economy that's a problem, it is consumerism, it is a demand side which needs to be kick-started. We are being told the Prime Minister has been asking specific questions on how healthcare can be given a booster shot, how tourism can be given a booster shot, how even textiles can. Remember, these are also high employment generating sectors. So these meetings are going to continue into the next week. The idea being the Prime Minister himself is holding these one-on-one meetings to understand the best fix, the best prescription for the Indian economy. We are being told there is no other bureaucrat in the room. There is no government official either from the Prime Minister's office or any other ministry in the room. In fact, no other minister has been invited for the meetings. It is one-on-one between India Inc. and the Prime Minister. And now, in the India Development Debate, I'm getting you an interview with one of the gentlemen that actually sat down with the Prime Minister to provide his prescription for the economy. Joining me, the chairman of the Piramal Group, Ajay Piramal. He had been summoned on 1st of January to come out with his solutions, his ideas, his suggestions for reviving economy, reviving consumerism, bringing demand back. Hi, Mr. Piramal. Happy New Year. Did the Prime Minister spoil your holiday plans, or would you say this was a good start to the new year?
I think it was a very good start to the new year. It's good that in this environment, when the economy is going through some challenging times, that the Prime Minister himself is personally looking into it. As you said, he did not have any other officials with him there. His main purpose was to understand what are the pain points that the economy has, what are our suggestions so that the economy can revive. And it was a very broad and open and frank discussion that he was encouraging.
So, Mr. Piramal, can you share with us, the group that you went with? We do understand that there are that the meetings of the Prime Minister have been in groups. Some of these have been sectoral.
The Prime Minister actually wanted to speak about the overall economy itself. It was not that he was open to listen to any comments in any sector as far as the economy was concerned. We discussed many subjects, out of which some of the points discussed was how credit flow would increase towards business and industry. We talked about how NBFCs needed more credit, how real estate needs to be revived. We talked about the pharmaceutical industry, the medical diagnostics industry, and hospitals as well. And he was actually open to discuss any other issues that we had.
I would like to tell you that before we got you here on India Development Debate, I did reach out to two other members, and they were on this very show 2 days ago, and they told us about how the Prime Minister actually opened the meeting by saying, please be honest in your feedback, give suggestions on how to revive the economy, bring demand back, basically to not hold back, and that he was going to be in listening mode. Was it a similar mode during your meeting?
Yeah, it was absolutely similar. In fact, he added one more thing in addition to being in listening mode. He says that please also, if there is any criticism or if there's any failings, please let us know, because the desire is only to improve. So I think this was in addition to everything else that you said.
Okay. Now, you represent some very important sectors, Mr. Piramal. A lot of them are also high employment generating. Would you be able to share with us some of the suggestions that you have made?
So we talked about how credit would could be increased in the economy, and how when credit increases, how demand would go up. And we talked about specifically in the NBFC sector. We talked about in the real estate sector. As far as the credit flow to the NBFC sector was concerned, the Prime Minister said that those companies, those NBFCs which had good asset quality, as we have in Piramal Enterprises, would get enough adequate credit. We also spoke about how the real estate industry needs to be revived, because real estate at the end of the day contributes to 7 to 8% of the GDP of the economy and 17% of the employment, and how almost 250 to 300 industries are affected by the real estate industry. In addition, we also, the Prime Minister was very keen to see that how medical diagnostics could be further supported in this country, because that's a large import taking place of such equipments. And now with the Ayushman Bharat and all the spending in healthcare going up, he was very keen to see that how Indian industry could support the making of medical equipment and diagnostics.
Okay. And, the other thing I want to ask you, Mr. Piramal, and it's a story we've done here on ET now, that besides what all you've been talking about, particularly as far as credit and the financial services go, that the Prime Minister has, I believe, asked, and they have told me this off record, a couple of industrialists, to get back with suggestions on reviving demand. That one of the diagnoses now seems to be that maybe the pain point in the economy is not on the supply side, but is more on the demand side, and therefore you've got to get consumption back, you've got to get demand back. Did you get such a feeling?
I think it was the industry who has been saying that demand has to come back. We also said that really it's a question of supplies on one side, but it's more important to see that demand is back. So yes, that is a correct interpretation.
Has he called you back, Mr. Piramal? I believe a couple of industrialists have been called back, and they have to get back with more data and more ideas.
So I think the Prime Minister is always open for that, and he said that he's willing to meet again across any industry. It's not only confined to the financial services or pharma. Any industry, if you have suggestions, he's open to listen to them. So he is he seems to be very determined to see that how industry and how the economy can be revived.
Mr. Piramal, I have to ask you this one question. You did say in one of your answers that not did just the Prime Minister say he's in listening mode. He also said to be honest as far as criticism goes. Now, this has been one of the things that have been spoken about by industry, and a lot has said that, can you really be honest in giving feedback with this government? Was your group honest, and did you give any criticism?
So I've always been honest whenever such a conversation has taken place, and I was there too. So yes, the criticism as well as what is the positives were given.
Mr. Piramal, we have seen a big corporate tax rate cut. Now, the belief was, when that was announced, was that corporates were going to respond to that by increasing investments, but private sector capex cycles still remain stubborn. Why do you think that is the case? And for that, therefore, again, is it consumption, that side, that needs to be addressed to bring money back directly to the consumer so that the private sector has a reason to invest?
Absolutely. Private sector, the corporate tax does help in seeing that there is more cash available into the corporates, but you can only invest when there is a demand. So what's really important is to see that how demand can increase, and then obviously the capacity build up would follow.
But Mr. Piramal, the other reason, we have seen maybe private sector not invest, and this has been spoken about. In fact, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman went on a yatra to address this entire issue, and that is the fear of the investigative agencies, the fear of the taxman, which has resulted in the private sector being in a mode of fear and not investing. Do you think until that is addressed, we really will not see an increase in the capex cycle, or at least the capex cycle reviving somewhat?
No, I think really the most important thing is for demand to come. If there is demand, let me tell you that industry will invest, because you don't want the demand to go unsatisfied, or you don't want that somebody else, either the competition or it could be imports, that take it over. So once the consumption cycle revives and demand revives, I think capex will take place.
Mr. Piramal, my job is also to play the role of the devil's advocate here. So I will also ask this question. The private sector has not been up to the mark when it comes to corporate governance standards, and that is something that we have seen. This entire slowdown has started because of INFS and the pathetic state of affairs when it came to corporate governance over there. And Mr. Uday Kotak often says, don't confuse corporate governance with liquidity. But having said that, all of you also have to deal with a lot of extraneous circumstances. For example, if I were to look at Indigo, you have two promoters that are fighting, EGMs being called. You're a board member at Tata Sons. Look at the NCLAT verdict. There is a shadow of doubt now on the management. How are all of you grappling with all of this?
So, a lot of changes have taken place in the environment for doing business in India. All of that is actually towards making it it's a better corporate governance. Sometimes one may feel that the changes that are being suggested are being too rapid, and there could have been a more gradual slide path. But I think this is the way the world will be. What's happening in Indigo, these are all, I think, individual examples. The Tata matter is before the Supreme Court, so I think we should let the courts decide what will be the ultimate direction for Tatas.
My final question to you, Mr. Piramal, would you see the Prime Minister's intervention as the biggest confidence booster that the economy could have received? The last couple of weeks, there's been all this talk of, is the government distracted with the CAA when it has a bigger problem, which is the economy, that it is not tackling with. But now it's the Prime Minister himself who is taking stock of that too, a month before budget.
So it's a very good positive sign that the Prime Minister is taking his personal interest in the economy. Now, what is done, what he says, and then how it is put into action by the government is what we will now wait to see.
With that, Mr. Piramal, I'd like to thank you for being so candid and joining us here on ET Now. Ajay Piramal was in a closed-door meeting with the Prime Minister. There were no other government officials or bureaucrats. As you heard Mr. Piramal say, the Prime Minister, in listening mode, asked industry for feedback, asked industry for suggestions. Thank you, Mr. Piramal, and here's wishing you and the entire team a very Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, and thank you.
Geopolitics reigning supreme this Friday. United States versus Iran. A US airstrike has killed key Iranian and Iraqi military personnel, including the Iranian Major General Qasem Soleimani, in an early surprise